जब तक साधन अजु नहीं लागत, जब तक साधन अजु नहीं लागत, कछु नहीं लागत, कछु नहीं लागत, जब तक साधन कछु नहीं लागत, हर जग नहीं कठिन, जोड़े बढ़िया हर जग नहीं कठिन, जोड़े बढ़िया राम गोविंद हरि, जोड़े बढ़िया राम गोविंद हरि। संतत संपत्ति सुख के कारण, संतत संपत्ति सुख के कारण, सुख के कारण, संतत संपत्ति सुख के कारण, जास भूल करी जोड़े बढ़िया, जास भूल करी जोड़े बढ़िया राम गोविंद हरि, जोड़े बढ़िया राम गोविंद हरि। कहत कबीर कहत कबीर जामुख राम, कहत कबीर जामुख राम, आमुख धूल करी जोड़े बढ़िया, आमुख धूल करी जोड़े बढ़िया राम गोविंद हरि, जोड़े बढ़िया राम गोविंद हरि, जोड़े बढ़िया राम गोविंद हरि, राम गोविंद राम गोविंद हरि। सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना, सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना, तेरी प्रीति अमर हरि नाम बिना रे, प्रीति अमर हरि नाम बिना रे। सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना, सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना, तेरी प्रीति अमर हरि नाम बिना रे, प्रीति अमर हरि नाम बिना रे। सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना, कूप नीर बिना धेनु शीर बिना, कूप नीर बिना धेनु शीर बिना, घर की मेह बिना, जैसे तरुवर फल बिना हीना, जैसे तरुवर फल बिना कैसे प्राणी हरि नाम बिना सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना तेरी नीति उमर हरि नाम बिना नीति उमर हरि नाम बिना सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना सुमिरन कर ले मेरे मना तेरी नीति उमर हरि नाम बिना नीति उमर हरि नाम बिना सुमिरन कर मेरे मना काम क्रोध मद लोभ काम क्रोध मद लोभ छोड़ दे अब संत जना कहे नानक शाह सुन भगवन कहे नानक शाह सुन भगवन या जग में नहीं कोई अपना सुमिरन कर मेरे मना सुमिरन कर मेरे मना तेरी नीति अमर हरि नाम बिना नीति अमर हरि नाम बिना सुमिरन कर मेरे मना सुमिरन कर मेरे मना तेरी नीति अमर हरि नाम बिना नीति अमर हरि नाम बिना सुमिरन कर मेरे मना
Namaskar, Ram Ram. Welcome to the online Kasturba Katha, the story of Kasturba Gandhi, narrated by me and hosted by the Gandhi Centre, Embassy of India in The Hague. I want to express my deep gratitude to the Ambassador Shri Venu Rajamaniji and Professor Nirmala Sharmaji, Director of the Gandhi Centre, for hosting the Kasturba Katha this evening during the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, which incidentally is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi, the life partner of Mahatma Gandhi for over 62 years, and who played an important role in making Mohan Das Karamchand Gandhi into the Mahatma. I pay my humble obeisance to the Matru Shakti, representing 50% of all of us women in the entire world. In today's Kasturba Katha, I will tell you the story of a lady as strong and as great as Mahatma Gandhi, her role in his life, in all the satyagrahas, her extraordinary contribution to public health emergencies, serving people during the outbreak of deadly diseases, and also in the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918. And we should all learn from Kasturba Gandhi and apply to cope up physically, mentally, and spiritually to keep ourselves safe and healthy during the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic under which all of us are reeling. Today is also the Indian festival of Teej, when women celebrate the reunion of Lord Shiva and Goddess Shakti, the manifestation of all in the one divine consciousness. According to Hindu mythology, Parvati is an incarnation of Lord Shiva's first wife Sati. Lord Shiva became grief stricken and withdrawn after she immolated herself in protest of her father's disapproval of Lord Shiva. It took her 108 subsequent births to bring Shiva out of his meditative state and get him to accept her as his wife again. Her 108th birth was as goddess Parvati. The invocation of Parvati's blessings during the festival of Teej is believed to bring continued marital bliss. In all the ashrams established by Gandhiji, Kasturba, along with all the ashram inmates, used to celebrate the festival of Hartalika on the third day of the Shukla Paksha of Bhadrapada month, as per the custom in Gujarat. The observance is similar to Teej that you are celebrating today. Married and unmarried women observe a fast on Hartalika and offer kevda flowers to Goddess Parvati and Lord Shiva. I remember the festival vividly in Sevagram Ashram during my childhood days, as we used to decorate the jhanki, stay awake the whole night singing bhajans. We wore green saris, green bangles, and put mehendi on our palms. And today, during the commemoration of Gandhi 150, and which we the Gandhijans are calling it as Babapu 150, I will start the Kasturba Katha with Kasturba's favorite chopais from the Ramcharitmanas, which she used to recite every day. And please listen in to the chopais.
काम को मद मान लो लोभ न क्षोभ न राग न काम को मद मान लोभ न क्षोभ न राग जिनके कपट दंबन माया तिनके हृदय बसहु रघुराया जिनके कपट दंबन माया तिनके हृदय बसहु रघुराया। सबके प्रिय सबके हितकारी, दुख सुख सरस प्रशंसा गारी। सबके प्रिय सबके हितकारी, दुख सुख सरस प्रशंसा गारी। कहि सत्य प्रिय वचन विचारी, जगत सोवत शरण तुम्हारी। कहि सत्य प्रिय वचन विचारी, जगत सोवत शरण तुम्हारी। तुम ही छोड़ गति दूसरी नाई, राम बसहु तिनके मन माही। तुम ही छोड़ गति दूसरी नाई, राम बसहु तिनके मन माही।
So, during the commemoration of Gandhi 150 in 2017, I had come to Netherlands also to speak on 2nd October in the Peace Palace in The Hague. And during that year, 2019, last year, I visited 33 countries and gave 148 Gandhi Katha and Kasturba Katha. In each of the countries that I have visited, people showed great reverence and respect for both Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi. As I spoke about the sacrifice and the contribution of Kasturba Gandhi for inspiring millions of women in every corner of the world. In the lockdown period also, I am reaching out to people in 38 countries through the online Gandhi Katha and Kasturba Katha with the help of various Indian missions. Kasturba Katha is based on the Indian oral tradition of Katha with bhajans and dhuns. In today's Kasturba Katha, Srimati Swati Bhagat and Sri Deepak Kalra are singing the bhajans and the dhuns which you have heard. The technical support and the PowerPoint presentation are by Dr. Ravi Chopra ji. The lyrics of the Katha dhuns have been composed by late Sri Narayan Desai ji, who was my mentor, and the renowned Hindi poet late Sri Bhavani Prasad Mishra ji. I am very grateful to all of them. Kastur, the daughter of Gokuldas Makanji and Braj Kuwar Ba, was born in Porbandar on 11th April 1869. In the same year as Mohan, the son of Karamchand Gandhi and Putli Bai was born. Both the families were neighbors and great friends. The Gandhis used to call their youngest son as Monia, who was 6 months younger than Kastur, and the Makanjis named their only daughter as Kastur, who had two brothers, one younger and one older, and grew up as the only daughter of the wealthy and indulgent parents. The Gandhi family also showered their love and affection on this very sweet Kastur because they had only sons. Often Kastur used to go to Monia's courtyard to play hide and seek. She was a fast runner and could beat Monia in the game. And he used to get very upset as always used to become the den. Monia was always very annoyed and maintained that he was older than Kastur. He said he had the horoscope to prove that, and an argument used to take place with girls siding with Kastur and boys standing with Monia. When Putlibai came to pacify the children, she always took Kastur's side. Monia used to get very annoyed about this. It was only when Kastur said that they should go to Mota Bapu, that is Karamchand Gandhi, to decide about it, would Monia stop the fight. As they grew up, Monia started attending the school, but Kastur stayed at home because that was the custom in those days, 150 years ago. Girls were not sent to school. But she grew up listening to the mythological stories of great women like Sati Anusuya, Savitri, Taramati, and the great sacrifices made by them. Kastur was determined to be like them and make all the sacrifices necessary for the cause of the husbands. Kastur was also taught later on to cook and to take care of everyone. But Kastur loved singing also, so she also learned bhajans. Her upbringing and values were of the Vaishnava family, which included going to the temple daily, worship of the sacred tulasi plant, strict vegetarianism, and service intertwined with equality of religions, all the religions, the dignity of labor, and control of the palate through vratas. It did not involve a rebellion against men. It combined renunciation, tapas, and non attachment with self dependence, dignity, and sacrifice. Kastur and Monia's parents decided to knit the two families closer together by marrying off their children, and Kastur and Mohan were engaged when they were merely 7 years old and were married off at the age of 13 in 1882 with great pomp and ceremonies. After marriage, Kastur came to be known as Kasturbai and spent the early married life in her in law's home in Rajkot. Kasturbai, a spirited girl, never had the opportunity to go to school, but had a very good common sense and was a good judge of people. She was courageous, hardworking, simple, God fearing, independent, persevering, and reticent. She was also very fond of dressing up in colorful saris and wearing jewelry like all the young married girls of her age. In her adolescent years, she grew up to become a very beautiful, pretty, and lovely lady. She had a good grasp of things, and her behavior in the in law's home was impeccable. Everyone loved her very much, especially her mother in law, Putlibai. Kasturbai was quite mature and had a good understanding of the worldly matters, unlike her husband, Mohandas. She used to be busy the whole day helping her mother in law in taking care of the very large extended family, a joint family, taking care of everyone's needs. Because of her selfless service, everyone used to praise her. These were the samskaras she had learnt in her parents' home. Kasturbai used to come to her room late at night, very tired and exhausted, and always found her husband waiting for her eagerly. Then she would attend to the needs of her husband, who was very keen to educate her and teach her history, geography, maths, and other subjects. But Kasturba used to doze off and fall asleep. And Mohan used to get annoyed, and in spite of his best efforts, Kasturbai could take no interest in studies. After marriage, she resisted when her husband restricted her movements to go to meet her friends and go to the temple without his permission. Kastur was a very independent girl and had many friends. Wanted to go out whenever she wanted to visit her friends and then again to the temple with her mother-in-law or alone. When she was spoken to like this by her husband, who was a friend also, she kept quiet and still went to the temple. She was never rude. She never was discourteous. She never answered back. But probably she never ever listened to her husband's commands of not going anywhere without his permission. Later on, Gandhiji wrote in his autobiography that my wife became my guru from that day. I learned the first lessons of non-violence from my wife, and that was the truth force, the force of truth, and also breaking the law courteously, Savinay Avagya, which he later on used in all his non-violent civil disobedience movements. He also learned how powerful the force of truth is. In 1884, Kastur gave birth to her first child prematurely, who unfortunately did not survive. Both the parents were heartbroken at this loss of their firstborn son, and by the passing away of Mohan's father, Karamchand Gandhi. In 1888, Mohandas left for Bhavnagar to join Shamaldas College, leaving behind a lonely and grieving Kastur. As Mohandas returned home from Bhavnagar in 1888 without completing his college studies, which he didn't like, the same year their son Hari Lal was born. As the family was facing financial difficulties, on the advice of an old family friend Mauji Dave, Mother Putlibai decided to send her son to England to study law for 3 years. But before going to London, Mohandas took 3 vows in front of his mother, and that he kept up with all those vows in spite of a lot of difficulties throughout his life. And in the dhun that we are going to play now, which is called Man Vani Karma Se Satya Hi Tu Bol, Ishwar Sakshat Honge Antar Tatol. And that also shows Gandhiji's darshan in that dhun.
मनमानी करके सत्य ही तो मनमानी करके सत्य ही तो जीवन में मंगल के द्वार जीवन में मंगल के द्वार ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक देखा ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक देखा सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुंदर सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुंदर मनमानी करके सत्य ही तुझो जीवन में मंगल के द्वार ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक देखा सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुंदर सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुंदर सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुंदर
The other problem was money. Mohan went everywhere, but he couldn't raise enough money for his trip to London. So, to cover up the expenses, Kasturbai gave away her jewelry, which was mortgaged without any complaints. As Kasturi could not read or write at all, Mohandas's message to her was sent in the letters he wrote to brother Karsandas. And he also sent a photo from London. She almost did not recognize her husband in the western clothes, with a neat side parting of the hair. Only his right ear gave him away. She thought that he was looking more like an Englishman than a Gujarati. Life was tough for young Kasturibai, as her mother-in-law Putlibai was also, she passed away, and for the wife of a younger brother in a joint family, it was very, very tough. In 1891, barrister Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi returned from England and was admitted to the Bombay High Court. Kasturba did not go with him to Bombay. After a few days, he had to return to Rajkot as he could not make much of a success of his legal career. Kasturbai had noticed the worries of his brothers Lakshman Das and Karsan Das about the financial conditions of this joint family. One night she reminded Mohandas about the debt he owed to his brothers. But to her, the husband seemed quite oblivious to the problems and he did not even care about his obligations to his brothers. Mohan got very annoyed and immediately sent her packing off to her parents' house along with child Harilal. Kastu realized that her husband's main problem was with himself and it had nothing to do with her and he would soon ask her to return. When she was asked to come back within a month, Kasturi was not surprised. But now there were no more lessons, no more suspicion, no more quarrels, and there was a new tenderness in Kasturbai as she learned more about her husband's true worries and insecurities when he started telling her about it. In 1882, their second son Manilal was born, and as Mohandas had taken to drafting and writing petitions in Rajkot, their financial conditions had improved. In April 1883, Mohandas sailed to Durban, South Africa for 1 year on an assignment, leaving behind Kastur with 5-year-old Harilal and an infant Manilal. In 11 years of marriage, they had hardly lived together for 4 years. And during his stay in South Africa, there was no direct correspondence between them, so the entire responsibility of bringing up two children fell on Kasturbai. That 1 year in South Africa stretched to 3 years. And during these years, young barrister Mohandas Gandhi had come face to face with racial discrimination, humiliation, and injustice faced by the thousands of Indians and Girmitias who were brought by the British to work on sugar, cotton, and tea plantation and rail construction projects in British colonies from remote places in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh. From 1834 to the end of World War I, Britain had transported about 2 million Indian indentured workers to 19 colonies, including Fiji, Mauritius, Ceylon, Trinidad, Guyana, Malaysia, Uganda, Kenya, and South Africa. The plight of the Girmitias was very, very pathetic, and as the indentured labor system of bonded labor that was instituted, allowing the abolition of slavery, the Indian indentured labor were treated worse than slaves. On 7 June 1883, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi was thrown out of the first class compartment of the train in Pietermaritzburg railway station. On that night, a metamorphosis took place as he discovered a new way of fighting injustice through nonviolent resistance, self suffering, and sacrifice. On that night, individual barrister Mohandas Gandhi turned into the societal Gandhi Bhai, emerging as an activist, political organizer, and the secretary of the Natal Indian Congress to oppose injustice non-violently by mobilizing 30,000 Indian merchants and Indian indentured labor or girmits living in South Africa. Barrister Mohandas Gandhi had also established a fairly good practice and he used to earn up to £2,000 in those days, which was a good sum. Now, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi was also very famous for accepting only the cases based on truth. So, to explain this concept of his ideology or philosophy of truth, non-violence, satya and ahimsa, and satyagraha, I will play the dhun Lagire Lagan, Satya Ahimsa mein Man Mera Magan. Gandhiji returned to India in 1896 to collect his family from Rajkot and wanted to return to South Africa and settle there. But here at home, his children hardly recognized him as they were more attached to Mota Bapu, Lakshmi Das, and Karsan Das Gandhi. However, the Gandhi family sailed in the ship SS Kurland with Kasturba, Harilal, Manilal, and his nephew Gokul Das. Gandhiji decided that Kasturba should wear the Parsi style sari with a long blouse. Children should wear socks and shoes, Parsi coat and trousers, and eat with forks and knives, which were more suitable to their new surroundings. This caused a lot of hardship and a heavy price to Kasturba and children to be regarded as civilized. Though in Durban, Kasturba lived in a spacious beach grove villa and, for the first time, had a home of her own, she prepared herself to face great hardships and suffering to start a new life in a foreign land with no friends and no relatives. Later on in South Africa, Kasturba got interested in studies. She learned to speak in English from Millie Pollack, whose husband, Henry Pollack, used to live along with her in the home of the Gandhis, which was an open house. She learned Hindi as well and also about all the subjects and became well versed with whatever was going on in the world at that time. And for all her four sons, she was very keen to get them educated like their father because she had never had an opportunity to go to school. Kasturba had a quality like that of most Indian wives who willingly or unwillingly follow in their husband's footsteps and never stand in their way. Gandhi's home, as I said, was an open home. Everybody was welcome. Kasturba started noticing a very big change in Mohandas, who was now known as Mr. Gandhi in Durban, who had become very calm and composed, forgiving, and he did what he advised others to do and became busier than ever before. Kasturba silently resolved to walk along with her husband on the path of selfless service through non-violence. But over time, Kasturba came to realize that her husband stood for certain ideals and principles, and she would stand by them come what may. In due time, she watched her husband getting obsessed with the idea of simplifying their lives and reducing household expenses as more money was to be spent on public service. All servants were dismissed. Now everyone, including the children, had to help with the household work. The biggest burden, of course, had to be borne by Kasturba, who had not only to cook and look after her immediate family, but all the guests and many boarders who used to live with them. During this time, these years, Kasturba gave birth to their third son, Ramdas, and fourth son Devdas in South Africa. And in the absence of an Indian nurse, Gandhi assisted the doctor and in the last case, he conducted the delivery himself. Kasturba was bedridden for a long time with anemia and extreme weakness, so her husband Mohandas took care of his wife Kasturba, the children, and the newborn baby. Kasturba's philosophy of life was embedded on faith, and her firm resolve transformed into conviction. The virtues of a Hindu woman and love for her husband prompted Kasturba to move to Phoenix settlement for a life of community living, voluntary poverty, voluntary self control, bread labor in 1904. Those values and love for her husband gradually became integral to her life in Phoenix settlement or the Phoenix ashram, ultimately resulting in faith which she started propagating. She was the first Indian woman satyagrahi who voluntarily faced jail sentence in foreign soil in South Africa in a fight for the basic rights of Indian Girmitya women. She willingly quoted the jail term in an alien land without knowing the language and keeping her vegetarian habit intact. The ladies of Phoenix settlement also joined the struggle, and so did the Girmitya women who made great sacrifices to take part in the satyagraha led by Gandhi Raja. Kasturba Gandhi, by her silent suffering as a prisoner sentenced in 1913 to 3 months rigorous imprisonment, made a crucial contribution to the success of the Satyagraha in South Africa, but this is little known. The faith stayed with her from life as she moved from South Africa to India and settled in Sabarmati Ashram from 1917 to 1930 and in Sevagram Ashram from 1936 to 1942. In all the ashrams, she was known as Ba, the mother of all the ashramites. Ashram life had a mingling of political and spiritual aims. It was a training ground to prepare ordinary people as satyagrahis and lifelong workers engaged in constructive programs for nation building. It was a life of strict routine from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m., a life of voluntary self control through Ekadasha Vrata, punctuality, discipline, promptness, minimalistic living, and living in harmony with nature. For Kasturba, the ashram life was a life of sharing and caring, being ever vigilant to the needs of others, managing the ashrams with meager finances, and using every minute of time, which is the only non renewable resource that all of us have if we are lucky, and we must use our time very carefully, like Gandhiji and Kasturba. Ba was known for her punctuality, discipline, and promptness, like her husband. It was Kasturba who managed all the ashrams established by Gandhiji financially and otherwise also. She knew who liked each one each one's likes and dislikes, which guest liked tea with sugar or without sugar, coffee with milk or without milk. She used to be like her husband's shadow and took on the responsibility of the entire household and all the ashrams, due to which Gandhiji could totally immerse himself in his work and carry on satyagraha. The life in the ashram never suffered in the absence of her husband Gandhiji. Kasturba was such an empowered and capable lady, and each one of us should learn lessons from Kasturba and become like her in understanding, sacrificing, serving selflessly, and working very hard. I'm very happy to inform you that I was born in Sevagram Ashram, where my parents lived and followed Gandhiji's path. And even after Gandhiji passed away in 1948, we continued to do Gandhi Karya and walk on the path Gandhiji has left for humanity to do. Therefore, what I'm telling you today is based on what my father and my mother has told me, my own understanding and experience of living in the ashram founded by Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi. I have never seen Kasturba Gandhi as she passed away in the Aga Khan Palace jail, prison in 1944. and in the Sevagram ashram where I have spent my childhood, and where a few years ago Kasturba had actually lived with Gandhiji from 1936 to 19 till she passed away in 1942. She walked and breathed there. In the ashram, I used to feel her presence as if she was my own grandmother, whose blood flows in my veins. She was Ba, the mother to everyone, in taking the full responsibility of managing and running the various ashrams, always serving and looking after the innumerable guests. Her four sons had moved away from her, but she found her lost sons in Saint Vinoba Bhave, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahadev Desai, Jamnalal Bajaj, Kishori Lal Mashruwala, and Subhash Chandra Bose. All of them had great love and affection for both Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi. But now, when I was growing up, Ba was no longer there. But I met her as her shadows lingered. Her vibrations, her spirit, and her presence could be felt everywhere in the ashram. Her favorite tulsi plant had been planted by Gandhiji in 1944 in the Sevagram ashram after he was released from the Aga Khan palace during the Quit India movement near Bakuti. And you can see Bakuti behind me, where she lived and served her husband Gandhiji and became the mother to everybody. It was in the same veranda that she used to sit and recite the Ramcharitmanas daily after the all religious prayers that were held in the morning and evening. In the Sevagram ashram, I always stopped by the Tulsi plant and felt her presence there. As long as Ba was alive, she would worship the Tulsi plant and recite the shloka Mahaprasada Janani Sarva Saubhagya Vardhini Adhi Vyadhi Jara Muktam Tulsi Tvam Namostute. At the deepest level, I exist as consciousness, my consciousness, your consciousness, Gandhi's consciousness, Kasturba's consciousness, and the universal consciousness of the God are one and the same. Kasturba was not a follower of Gandhiji. She was a companion who observed the same duties. She had earned a place in history because of her sacrifice and strength of conviction, not only because she was the wife of Gandhiji, but it was mainly for her fight for the basic rights of the Girmitias in South Africa and in the freedom movement. Her life gives a glimpse of how a strong woman can empower herself, staying within the folds of the tradition and conventions. She supported the transformation of Mohan to Mahatma and was a silent partner in his struggle. She taught her husband Mohandas non-violence through her conduct. She never bowed to his unjust commands when he was playing the husband, yet never forsaking courtesy. She won over Gandhiji at the end of the bitterest disputes with a plain, frank speech, pleasant nature, and firmness. Her love for her husband never remained on low ebb. The fact that Kasturba contributed immensely to public health emergencies along with her husband Gandhiji is not very well known. She actively worked with him for eradication of plague and other deadly disease outbreaks, including during the Spanish influenza of 1918. By then, they had moved to India in 1915. So, when Kasturba was in Sabarmati ashram and Gandhiji was quite seriously sick because of dysentery and remained bedridden for a very, very long time, Kasturba took over the charge and not only cared for Gandhiji but looked upon all the children of the ashram as her own. She came to love others and serve them. They opened up the ashram as the quarantine center, prepared special food for boosting the immunity of the patients. Although they had lost their eldest daughter-in-law in Spanish pandemic of that time, they continued to serve others. She held conversations with women and family members on religious matters, and they read out the Bhagavad Gita to her. In spite of heavy pressure of work, she never failed to inquire about sick inmates of the ashram every day. Like Gandhiji, she also sponged the patients, gave them enema and baths, and applied mud poultices through nature cure. She was more than a nurse to the patients and had no fear of infection. So we will play the धुन रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम पाप की उखाड़ जड़ पापी को बचाए हम.
रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम पाप की उखाड़ जड़ पापी को बचाए हम पाप की उखाड़ जड़ पापी को बचाए हम जुल्मों को खत्म कर जुल्मी को बचाए हम जुल्मों को खत्म कर जुल्मी को बचाए हम अज्ञान को शेष कर भूल को बचाए हम अज्ञान को शेष कर भूल को बचाए हम रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम आप की उखाड़ जड़ पापी को बचाए हम उखाड़ जड़ पापी को बचाए हम आप की उखाड़ जड़ पापी को बचाए हम
Kasturba's life, which was a selfless life of sacrifice, suffering, service during all the challenging times, and her immense love for her husband, whom she had opposed in the beginning, but later on took up his cause and made it her own, is an inspiration for all of us. She was the life partner of Gandhiji for over 62 years, bore him 4 children, ran his various homes and ashrams, and went several times to jail for his cause. That she lived so long and played her part in public campaigns are two reasons why she is part of the nationalist consciousness. A third reason is that the man she was married to was the greatest man of modern India. A fourth is that Gandhiji wrote a lot about her in length, and that's how we come to know a little more about Kasturba Gandhi, who was a lady as strong and as great as her husband Gandhi. Her personality had a vastness of its own. Kasturba was a fighter, both in life and politics. Kasturba had a mode of life that drew from the Indian traditions and combined with them the revolutionary thinking of her husband Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. During the Quit India movement or the August Kranti Divas, which will be coming now on 7th August or 8th August, so they had set out for Bombay in 1942 from Sevagram. On 5th August, they left Sevagram ashram, and later on, after Gandhiji's speech in August Kranti Maidan, he was arrested and taken to Aga Khan Palace jail. Later on, Kasturba also followed because she was determined to take his place and give a speech at the Shivaji Maidan. So she was also taken to first to Arthur Road jail and then to the Aga Khan Palace. On 22nd February 1944, Kasturba Gandhi breathed her last on her husband's lap as a prisoner in the Aga Khan Palace jail. Gandhiji wrote that Kasturba was not behind him in any respect, and if anything, she stood above me. But for her unfailing cooperation, I might have been in the abyss. She helped me to keep wide awake and true to my vows. She stood by me in all my political fights and never hesitated to take the plunge. In the current sense of the word, she was uneducated, but to my mind, she was a model of true education. She was a devoted Vaishnava, and she adopted and regarded a Harijan girl with no less affection than her own children. In Narsingh Mehta's words, she was a true Vaishnava. And she saw that when Gandhiji was engaged in grim wrestle with death, and which happened many times, she looked after her. And even during that fast in the Aga Khan palace, Gandhiji writes that I literally came out of the death's jaw, but she stood, shed not a tear, never lost hope or courage, but prayed to God with all her soul. Sarojini Naidu described her as the living symbol of Indian womanhood. Never once did her feet falter in her heart or her heart quail on the steep path of perpetual sacrifice, which was her portion in the wake of the great man whom she loved and served and followed with such surpassing courage, faith, and devotion. She had passed from she has passed from mortality to immortality and taken her rightful place in the valiant assembly of the beloved heroines of India's legend, history, and song. In the homage titled The Mother of the Indian People, issued by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose on the death of Kasturba Gandhi on 22nd February 1944, he wrote, Srimati Kasturba was the ideal of Indian womanhood, strong, patient, silent, and self-sufficient. Kasturba was a source of inspiration to the millions of India's daughters, among whom she moved and whom she met in the struggle for the freedom of her motherland. In 1913, in South Africa, Gandhiji, her husband, had said that if she dies in the jail during Satyagraha, he would call her Jagadamba, the mother of the universe. Kasturba remained true to her word and became the universal mother, the Jagadamba for all of us. I will end Kasturba Katha with her blessings to realize our true potentials, to bring about change selflessly. I once again express my grateful thanks to the Gandhi Centre, Embassy of India in The Hague, for hosting the Kasturba Katha this evening on the auspicious festival of Teej. And I really convey my best wishes to all the people of the Netherlands today, all the Indian women who have gathered today. Some of you I met while I was in Netherlands, and many of you have come from Suriname. And it was a pleasure to listen to you talking a very peculiar mix of Bhojpuri, English, and Suriname or some such language, which I really enjoyed. And I wish I could speak that language to you. But anyway, I wish you all the best on this auspicious occasion, and may you all be healthy, well, and peaceful and happy in your future lives. And with Kasturba's blessings, I will now like you to hear the shloka Asatoma Sadgamaya from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, verse 1.2.28, which says, lead us from unreal to real, lead us from darkness to the light, lead us from the fear of death to the knowledge of immortality, which is asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya.
Amritam